Holistic Health Coach in Huntington Beach, and today we're going to do part 2 of Trick or Sweet, the dark side of sugar. So today we're going to show you the light side of sugar, and by making a sweet treat that won't derail your journey to health. So let's get started. We're going to talk about, what we're going to make today is we're going to make caramel apple bites. And if you're looking at the picture of them, you're going to see that they look a little bit like fried chicken. But they're not. They're not the prettiest, but believe me, they are very tasty. So what's good about these caramel apple bites? There's no refined sugar. Also, there's no added sugar of any kind. So there's no refined sugar, but there's also no added sugar. So remember last week we talked about the how many grams maximum you should have a day of added sugars. So added sugars would be, for just a refresher, added sugars for women would be 6 teaspoons a day max. It's not a requirement, it's a maximum. And for men, 9 teaspoons. These have no added sugar, so they're not going to count towards your 6 or 9 grams of added sugars. So what? Wait a minute. But you're telling me I like sweets. These are the same people last week who were telling us they don't eat sweets. This week they like sweets. But don't worry, because these caramel apple bites beat your sugar cravings. They include what we talked about last week. We talked about sweet fruits was part of the way to curb those sugar cravings and tamp down that sugar habit. So these include apples. That's a sweet fruit. They include dates. They include the whole date. That's a sweet fruit. They include nuts, also. That's satisfying. And then they include spices. And the spices are sweet enough to satisfy your sweet craving as well. And guess what? They're all real food. So with that, let's get started making our caramel apple bites. So what we're going to do today is we're going to start. First, I'm going to go a little backwards on the recipe, and I'm going to start grinding up the walnuts and the cinnamon first, because then I don't have to wash the food processor, and I like that. Okay, so we're going to put in the walnuts, and they're just nice chunks of walnuts. Okay, and the pumpkin pie spice. Now, I wrote on the recipe apple pie spice. I don't know what apple pie spice is. Pumpkin pie spice, however, you can see that. Pumpkin pie spice has cinnamon, cardamom, ginger, nutmeg, cloves, lemon peel. Nice, it's a nice spice. And we're going to put 2 teaspoons of that. Sounds like a lot. It is a lot, but it goes nicely. Makes a nice spicy topping. So 2 teaspoons of the spice. Okay. Then this is a cute little mini food processor that I borrowed from a very good friend. And we're just going to chop up these walnuts, and we're going to pulse it. We're going to pulse it so that it's not powdery. Looks powdery. You just want them to be little tiny pieces of walnuts. We're almost there. That should be good. So you just want little tiny pieces of walnuts. Yeah, a couple big ones there. Okay, that's good. So if you can see that, okay, so that's the size that you want the walnuts. And then I'm just going to put them into this other container for now and set them aside. And then we'll get on to our caramel sauce, which is quite delicious. Okay, so first thing we're going to put in is the coconut oil, and it says a heaping tablespoon of coconut oil, so you know when you scoop it, it mounds over the top of the spoon. That's your heaping tablespoon of coconut oil. Oops, there we go. Then a heaping tablespoon of almond butter. Yeah. It was a tablespoon, now it's just a glob. And you can use any nut butter you like. The reason the almond butter might work better for you is because of the caramely taste of the almonds. Cashew butter I thought might be nice too, but they have a more mild taste. Peanuts I think would be too strong, too peanutty. I like peanut butter a lot, but I think for this recipe the almond butter just works the best if you're trying to achieve a caramel taste. So that's the the almond butter. Then we're going to put the dates. Okay, so these are medjool dates, and I brought the container with me so you can see them. See them okay? Okay. So the reason you want to use the medjool dates, again, you're trying to achieve a caramel taste, and the medjool dates have a more caramely taste than other dates. But if you want, if you don't have them and you want to use other dates, that'll work fine too. You want the sweetness from the dates. Use whole dates. They can be dried or they can be fresh. These are fresh. And you're going to soak them. And if you're using the fresh dates, you want to soak them for about 15 minutes or half an hour in hot water so that they'll get soft and plump. And if you're using the dried dates, you're going to soak them much longer to get them nice and soft so that they'll be almost smushy, so that they'll be able to blend up smoothly here. And I think when I made it with the dried dates, I think I did it for about, I may have done it even overnight, I'm not sure. But it takes a while with the dried dates. So if you can use the medjool dates, you'll get the nicest, carameliest taste. And you see they're kind of plump? Can you see that? Okay. So I've got 5 medjool dates here. And again, it's the whole fruit. So it's not like we're adding sugar. It's going to give us plenty of sweetness, but we're not adding sugar because it's the whole fruit. Okay. Then we're going to add salt. The almond milk. This says 1.5 tablespoons of almond milk. Depending on how heaping your coconut oil and almond butter is, if you do way more or super high, you want to put a little bit more almond milk so it doesn't get too thick. We're going to put almond milk, reserve some in case I need more. And the Ceylon cinnamon. This is what I told you about last week. This helps with regulating your blood sugar. And again, it's not because we're putting it in one treat that we're going to have, regulated blood sugar. It works over time. But when you use this as your regular cinnamon every day, whatever you put, maybe you put some cinnamon in your tea or whatever you're using it for, your cereal, your oatmeal, using the Ceylon cinnamon will help regulate your blood sugar. The cinnamon that's in this pumpkin pie spice is not Ceylon cinnamon, it's cassia. That's good. It helps, not as much as the Ceylon. All of these spices that we're putting in today are anti-inflammatory, so that's really important. You want, no matter what, if you're using cinnamon or cassia or Ceylon, it's all anti-inflammatory. So that helps a lot. So we want 1 teaspoon of Ceylon cinnamon. I don't know where my teaspoon is, so I'll do 2 halves. And 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And then we're going to be ready to blend it up. And I just use this organic vanilla extract, pure bourbon vanilla extract. Okay, so now we're ready to blend it up. Did I miss anything? I've got everything I needed in here. And what we're going to look to achieve is we want a nice, smooth, caramely sauce. So we're going to blend it up until these dates, that's the key, until the dates are, you only see teeny bits of it. Yeah. And then what I do is, after I'm blending it, I will then push it down with this spatula, so we get all the goodness from the sides. And then just continue. We're almost there. And it looks good. Okay, so you can see that you can still see some of the dates, but they're just tiny pieces, and those will be fine. So we're going to have a nice, maybe I'll do just a bit more. Hold on. If you want it to be smooth, pretty smooth. It could be a little bit smoother at home, so just do it till you feel comfortable with the smoothness of it. Maybe I'll add the rest of the almond milk and see. I put a little bit extra almond milk in here, but my mounding of heaping teaspoons might have been bigger than I thought. That looks good. All right, so a little smoother, so it did need a little bit more liquid. Okay, so now I'm going to set that aside for a second, and I'm going to do my apples. And with my apples, I'm going to cut them into eight pieces, 8 wedges. So just cut them in half, half again, half again, cut out the center, and these I'm using Fuji apples. You want a nice crispy, I want a nice crispy sweet apple. Maybe your preference is not that. You might want a sweet tart apple like a Granny Smith or something. But I really like the Fujis, and they're nice and crispy for this recipe. And then you're going to, well, that's all right. You guys aren't eating these. I'm just going to use my hands that happen to be clean. So you're going to want to put a little lemon juice on these apple slices so they don't turn brown while you're doing the sauce and while you're waiting. So you're just going to toss these in the lemon juice. And then what you're going to do is you're going to dry them off. So they'll have the lemon juice on them, but you're going to dry them off so that the caramel sauce will stick. So you just want to dry off your apples. Okay, see that okay? So I'm just blotting them dry. They don't have to be super dry, but you don't want them soaking wet with lemon either. Okay, so now I'm going to take a dry bowl and put the caramel sauce in it. So You want to get all of it. Put the caramel sauce in your dry bowl. Because this is what we're going to toss the apples in. It really does look like caramel. Can you see that okay? And it smells like caramel also. So that's really interesting. You want to get everything you can. And then, of course, after the fact, you can lick the spoon. Okay, so now I'm going to take the apples, put them in here. Just putting them in the bowl with the sauce. And then I'm going to take my spatula again and turn them around and they look, they look like a mess. But that's okay because they're going to taste yum. So you just want to toss them around in the caramel sauce. You're not going to get them on every inch of apple, but you're going to try. And then after you put them in the little dish, you're going to put the excess on the apples. Okay. So now I've got a container here that I already put the wax paper in, and you want to use wax paper so it doesn't stick to the plastic wrap or parchment paper is what I usually use, but it just sticks. So you want to use wax paper and get as much of the apple covered as possible and just set them in here. Just going to set them in here on your wax paper. Can you see that? All right. And again, you're going to say, oh my gosh, I'm not covering them, but you will. You will cover them with the excess caramel sauce. Because I've got excess in here that didn't stick to the apples that we're going to place on top of the apples once they're in here. Okay, so now all the apples are in the container. Okay, and I'm just going to take the rest of the caramel sauce, which I've got a good amount here. The rest of the caramel sauce, and I'm going to place it, paint my apples with it. Okay, so obviously the bottom won't get more, but the tops will. And you're going to roll these in nuts, so it's not going to really matter how nice or not nice they look. You just want them to be sticky enough to have them, and caramely enough to have the taste, but also sticky enough to have the nuts stick. Okay, so I'm just kind of painting my apples. And almost done here. I've got a lot of sauce here. I'm going to try to get as much of it onto the apples. I don't want to waste it or eat it after you guys aren't watching. But you know I will. Okay. All right, that's pretty good. We've got them pretty well covered. And like I said, they will not win a beauty pageant, but they're caramely and gooey and yummy. All right. So then what you do now is you cover them and you place them in the freezer. And you're going to freeze them, not too long, you're going to freeze them for between 20 and 30 minutes. And the reason you're doing that is you want this caramely sauce to harden up a little bit, because these are impossible to work with. I'm actually going to try to work with one, pretend like it was in the freezer. You're going to see it's very gooey. But so after about half an hour, about 20 to 30 minutes, you're going to take them out of the freezer, and you're going to roll them in your walnuts. So we'll try with one, and it will be a sticky, gooey mess. But at least so you get the idea of what I'm doing. And then I'll show you, I did bring the finished product, so I'll show you that. All right, so I'm going to take one apple piece, and you see it's gooey and yucky, but that's all right. And I'm going to dip it in the caramel. It's not as bad as I thought it would be. Maybe we'll just do it like that. So you're going to dip your pieces into the walnuts. Did I say you're going to dip them into the caramel? I meant you're going to dip them into the walnuts. Yeah, some of the caramel's coming off. So when it's frozen, that's not going to happen. You don't want to freeze it so long that the apples get frozen, and the reason I know that is because I did it. And the apples were not delicious frozen, number one, and then number two, when they thawed, they tasted like baked apples. The whole texture was different. They weren't crispy. They were very soft. So can you see what I'm doing here? I'm just rolling these in the walnuts and making a little bit of a mess of it. That's all right. And probably I'm getting more walnuts on it than I would if, at one time than I would if they were frozen, because these are totally wet. See? Look like little fried chicken pieces. You will never see a fried chicken piece on one of my seminars. And so see that apple, I don't know if you can see that, is missing a lot of caramel on the side, but it's not going to matter. Well, taste-wise it'll matter, but it's not going to matter that much. And when you get down to the bottom, you can shake it a little bit to get those walnuts all over it. Usually I have extra walnuts left over, and then I can sprinkle it on, but because these are so wet, they're taking up all the walnuts. It's all right. Yep, that's all right. It looks ugly, but they're fine. Okay, so now we have the apples coated in walnuts. Put them back in the fridge. And that's where they'll live until you're ready to eat them. So you want to keep them cold, and I'm going to show you the finished product, and they're over here, sorry. Actually, they look very much like the unfinished product. Very much the same, except for these are cold. And they were frozen, then I rolled them, then I put them in the refrigerator, and I made them last night. So there's the cold, crispy, caramely apple walnut bites. So I think these would be delicious when you're watching your scary movie on Halloween. Or if you have kids or grandkids, you could stick some little eyes on them and make them apple creatures. Or you could put little chocolate chips for eyes and make them apple creatures. But honestly, any way you eat them, I think they're very delicious. And I hope you like them. So also, if you don't want to use nuts, if you don't want to use walnuts to roll them in, these are the chocolate chips I think I was telling you about last week. They are sweetened with stevia. But remember we were talking about being a label reader? Because out here it says stevia sweetened. Stevia sweetened. Can you see that? Okay. So stevia sweetened, you're like, oh good, just stevia in here. No, it's not. So you have to look at the ingredients, and the ingredients, unsweetened cocoa, that's fine. Inulin, erythritol, that's of all the sweeteners, that's what it is. Okay, so and stevia. Vanilla. Everything else is fine. I mean, it's fine, but it does have erythritol. And if you remember, last week we talked about erythritol being a sugar alcohol, and sugar alcohols can be disruptive to some people. If you I don't have a problem with erythritol, but some people do. So you might find a little bit of, if you eat too much of it, if you put two little eyes on here, you're probably not going to have a problem. But if you roll them in the stevia chips, you might. So the chocolate chips, I mean, sweetened with stevia and erythritol, you might. The erythritol might give you some gas or bloating. So that's it. Those are your treats, and I hope you, I'll show them to you one more time, in case you forgot what they look like. And I hope you enjoy them. And let me see, we have some questions. So, how long will they last when they're left in the fridge? I wouldn't leave them too long. I'd eat them within 2 days, maybe 3. Because they're apples, you know, and I did put lemon, but they will brown. Are there fun toppings you can add? Well, you'll see you could do coconut. You could do fun. I don't know about fun. You could do, you know, they have these like dried raspberries that are freeze dried. You can crumble them up, or strawberries. I don't know how that would go with caramel. Maybe put some cocoa in the caramel sauce and then roll them in the freeze-dried strawberries or raspberries. That might be nice. And it's pink. It might be cute. Valentine's Day. Coconut, the chocolate chips. I don't think you want to do sprinkles here, if that's the kind of fun you're looking for. Would regular non-almond milk be okay to use? Yes, it would. You could use regular milk. You could use cashew milk. You could use coconut milk. You're not using so much that it's going to change the taste. You're only using 1.5 tablespoons. So it's really not going to change the taste too much. And it should be fine. So any milk that you like. Okay, any other questions? All right then, let's see. Have a happy Halloween. And we'll see you here again November 11th at 2 p.m. to talk about how we're going to keep our holidays healthy. Okay? So have a nice Halloween, and we'll see you again next month. Okay, bye. Thanks for joining.